Settle back into the room, into this space. And as you lie there, just take a few moments to bring yourself back into this environment of learning, reorganizing. And what do you remember from last week? Do you remember some of the ATMs? Some of the concepts that we talked about? Maybe some of the hands-on practice? Preparing your ATMs to teach this week? And as you lie there, are you thinking about these in terms of words and ideas in your head? Or do you have some memory of these things in your body? So there's what you can remember in thinking, what you can remember in sensing, in moving, and in feeling, in the emotional side of it. And you might find that different parts of last week come back in different ways. And as we're starting this second week, do you have any ideas, thoughts, feelings about what you'd like to focus on this week? How you'd like to direct your attention in terms of your learning and your organisation? And how you might be able to bring that with you through all of the activities this week. Staying open to what is presented, but also having an idea of how you might like to personally direct your learning. And so we're starting with an ATM. And we'll come back to this idea of sensing yourself on the floor in this moment. So notice what you're thinking, how you're thinking. How the thoughts come and go, or do you get attached to them? Notice how you're feeling. What's happening internally? Notice what's moving as you lie here. How much of you is moving? And how much of you can you observe moving as you breathe in and out, resting on the floor. And how do you sense yourself? Can you sense yourself in relation to the floor, in terms of how you're contacting the floor, the parts of you that can be supported by the floor, and the parts of you that stay away from the floor, where there's space underneath you? Do you have a sense of how long you are and how wide you are, how much space you take up, how much volume you take up? Do you have a sense of what your eyes are doing? Are they resting in your eye sockets? Are they moving? Are they directed in a particular direction? And if you softly roll your head a little from one side to the other side, how does your head move across the ground? And how are your eyes connected to this movement? And does that bring back any memories from last week? And let your head rest. And so now think about how you would bring yourself from this position up to sitting. So think at first, think of perhaps anything that you recall from the first couple of ATMs that Julie taught, of shifting your weight across the ground. Which side does it feel is more available to roll to come up to sit? And when you're ready, just bring yourself up to sitting with your legs in front of you and your knees bent and your feet facing each other, the soles of your feet facing each other. And how can you arrange yourself in this position so that you're stable enough to be balanced here, but mobile enough that you are not stuck here? And when I say your feet are facing each other, they don't have to be connected to each other. They can just be in that position. So how far forwards do you want your feet to be? How close to your pelvis do your feet want to be? Just experiment a little bit with finding a position that's comfortable and easy for you to rest in, because we're going to come back to this position quite a lot. And where do your hands want to be when you're in this position? So some of you have got your hands behind, some are forwards. So have the idea that you're going to bring your hands towards your ankles And how do you organise to do that? What happens, how much of you moves to bring your hands towards your ankles, to be able to actually hold your right ankle with your right hand and your left ankle with your left hand? Does your weight shift on the floor at all? Does your pelvis move, or is this something that happens just in your arms? So how much of you do you notice in this very first movement of bringing your hands to hold your ankles? And leave your hands there. Have your right hand holding your right ankle, your left hand holding your left ankle. And start to have the idea that you could lift one foot from the floor and lift it up towards the ceiling. So notice how you hear that instruction. So you're finding, how can you get one leg light on the floor, one leg light enough to be able to lift it up towards the ceiling in that direction, which doesn't mean you have to get it up there in one go. So with the way that you hold your ankles, sometimes we have your thumb with your fingers, but that's not going to work so easily here. So just have your hand over the top of your ankles or around the side, but it's definitely around your ankles rather than on your heels. And lift one leg and let it down. And try the other one. So have your hands over the top rather than underneath, if you can. And notice what happens as you lift. How hard is that? How easy is that? Are you holding your breath? Are you allowing things in and out? Breath in, air out. That's it. And then just notice which is the easiest leg for you to lift. Do you have it? Can you sense that one is a little easier than the other? Most of the time there will be. And whichever one's easiest for you, we're going to start on that one. That's the one that you're going to continue with for a little while. Okay? And if you're not sure, just use whichever one you like. Okay, so pause for a little bit in that position. And bring your hands back to hold your ankles, both ankles. And now as you come back to this idea of just lifting one leg and letting it down again and continuing with that movement, could you feel how you could shift your weight to make that easier? So that if you're lifting your right leg, your left elbow could come a little towards the floor and your left knee could come a little towards the floor. If you're lifting your left leg, it's the other way around. So as you shift your weight to one side, does something get a little easier about lifting that other leg? And how far can you shift your weight? Could you move your weight far enough that your elbow could actually find the floor? So your other knee might find the floor. See how it is to hold the other leg at the moment. But if that's really tricky, that constraint is kind of a loose constraint. Hold it for now and then we'll let go of it and see what difference that makes. That's it. And so some of you are leaning your elbow onto the other knee. You can try that. Some of you are finding a way for your elbow to come all the way to the floor. That's it. And if you lose your balance, that's fine. You just roll back again. So there's this how far do you need to bring your weight to actually make that leg lighter so that you're not holding the muscles that restrict the movement of lifting your leg. That's it. So what would happen if you let go of that constraint of holding your other ankle? Does that make it easier? Oh, yes. So if you allow your elbow to come to find the ground somewhere else, could you experiment with where would be the easiest place, the most efficient place to bring your elbow to lean your weight onto that side to allow your leg to be light enough and loose enough and soft enough that your foot could come towards the ceiling and your knee could start to straighten a little more. That's it. Can you feel how much your head now is moving through space? And what's happening in your trunk? And are you breathing? And how much of you is moving as you do this now? Is it still just something that you're doing with your leg? Yes, I can see that question in your eyes. Experiment with the trajectory of your leg as well. So the idea is that your foot is going towards the ceiling. Now you can get it there any way you like, but you do want to stay sitting. Yeah? And rest whenever you like. And if you haven't had a rest, have a lie down and rest now. And as you're resting, you can think again back to some of those ideas that we explored in other ATMs and in conversations and in FI practice about shifting your weight, about including all of yourself in movement, about learning strategies. How do you learn something that might feel challenging? And for some of you, this might be a really easy thing to do already. So how do we stay in that optimal zone of learning? I might not have the absolutely correct term there, but you know what I mean, that green zone on the graph. If it's really difficult, how do we find ways to explore this that keeps us engaged and interested and not frustrated? And if this is really easy, how do we stay engaged in a way that allows us to look for more options than what we already know? So come up again to sitting. Feel, how do you do that? How do you bring yourself up to sitting easily? Up to that position where your feet are on the floor, your knees are out to the side. You can bring your hands to hold your ankles, and you can start now to find a way to lift your other leg, the leg you weren't lifting last time. And what have you learned from the first side that can help you on this side? So where could you lean your elbow this time to allow that leg to get light, to allow your foot to be able to reach towards the floor? Where are your eyes directed? Where's your head facing? What's happening in your pelvis? And how tightly are you holding your ankle? How tightly are you gritting your teeth? Can your ribs move? Can you let the whole length of your spine be mobile here? And this connection with your arm through to your shoulder and your shoulder blade, your collarbone, your sternum. So have you found a place that's easy for your elbow to rest? If we let go of the constraint of holding your other ankle, where's the nicest place, the place that feels pleasant, supported, comfortable, that allows all of you to come into this action of lifting your leg? And try a few different places. It might be behind you, it might be to the side of you, it might be somewhere in between, it might be close to you, it might be further away from you. And keep experimenting. And that's it. And then lie down, have another little rest. And just notice what's different about the way that you're lying here now. Has your breathing changed? Are you sensing internally a little bit differently? Are your legs lying differently on the floor? And the space is a bit different underneath you. And come up again to sitting if you're ready. You can take a longer rest if you need to. Find your own rhythm, your own pace for this. And have your feet in front of you, your soles of your feet facing each other. And as you bring your hands to hold your ankles, are you doing this a little bit differently now? Is there more of you involved in just that simple action of bringing your arms forwards to hold each leg? And now it's the same movement, but see how it is to alternate. So lift one leg and then come back and lift the other leg. And each time you're holding your right ankle with your right hand and your left ankle with your left hand, and you're staying sitting, so your head is upright. So have that idea. But it's moving. Your head can move through space. And your arm can lean to one side. So how do we make this a smooth transition from one side to the other side? So it may be that your hand can stay holding each ankle as you lift the other one, or it might be that it's easier for you at the moment to let go of one hand, to lean on that elbow as you lift the other leg, to bring that hand back to lift that leg and slide the other hand off. But you still want the idea that your leg is lifting towards the ceiling, that your knees start away from each other, your feet start towards each other. So you're starting with this bent leg and lifting up towards the ceiling and feeling how your pelvis is going to roll. Your weight shifts to lean onto that other elbow. and that you're breathing. So you can do it either way. So that's what we want to get to eventually, that both hands can hold without letting go, which means that you need to find a place for your elbow to come to the floor that's a little different from if you let your ankle go. Yeah? So you can choose to stay with this constraint, or you can let go of that constraint and find how can you lean to your side enough that your leg can get light. So if you haven't tried letting go of your ankles yet, have a go of that and feel when you what frees up. So hang on. The ankle you're letting go of is the ankle that's staying on the floor. So sorry about that. That would be much easier if you just let your leg go up in the air. So the leg that's going up in the air, you're going to hold that ankle. But see how it would be if your other arm could come towards the floor, and it might even go a little further out to the side than what you've tried already. Yeah. And what happens there? So as you lean to that side, does something happen that allows your leg to get lighter and freer to move towards the ceiling? And what's the optimal position for that elbow? So try a few different places. Some of you are still doing the same thing. Even if it works nicely for you, try a different place. Does it make it easier or less easy if you take your elbow a little behind you, or if you take your elbow more to the side? Your other foot is staying on the floor though. That part is a constraint. That's it. And how many different, as you move your elbow to different places on the floor, how does that change the shape that you're making with your trunk? The curve of your spine, the bending and folding and opening of your ribs. Do you think you're sitting there? That's fine. There's no rules about it. You can be almost lying if you like, if that makes your leg freer. So what is it that actually frees your leg up? If you bring your base of support bigger and wider, does that change the ability of that leg that you're lifting to be free enough to lift? Yeah. And when that happens, feel the lightness in your leg and the ability of your leg to get a little bit straighter. As muscles let go because they're not having to hold on. That's it. Yeah. Yeah. And their elbow? Absolutely. Elbow and forearm. So for your elbow to come to the floor, yeah. So your elbow, your forearm, your hand. And everybody have a lie down again. And does that feel any different to lie there? Has anything changed in your sense of your length, your ability to feel all of yourself on the floor. So I've been playing with this over the weekend. A lot. And then I went for a run this morning. I had really light legs. It's lovely. And it's interesting how, and I run with a group of women. They all do their stretches before they start, their hamstrings and their calves and all the bits that feel tight to them. I do a very different warm-up, which is all about moving, softening, loosening, shifting weight. And despite the howling gale that we were running into this morning, it actually didn't feel too bad. So come up again. Feel, how do you bring yourself up to sitting? Bring your feet in front of you, soles of your feet facing towards each other. And bring your hands forward to hold your right ankle with your right hand and your left ankle with your left hand. And just see how this position is now for you. Your knees out wide. And how close do your feet need to be to you to feel comfortable? Do we, sometimes we have a habit of feeling like our feet have got to be in really close. See, where do you organise your base of support to start this movement again? And this time, come back to this idea of having of keeping hold of both ankles. So what have you learnt from this leaning out to the side and leaning back and all of those things that you could bring now into your awareness? Woo! That'll wake us up, to start to lift one leg and then the other leg without letting go of the leg that's on the floor. So could you find a way for your elbow and your forearm, possibly, for your other elbow to come towards the floor without letting go of your ankle? So it's a different direction. Yeah. So feel, how can you bring that elbow out wide, wider than your knee? That's it. To find the floor. Nah. So the leg that you're lifting is one side. The leg that's staying down towards the floor is the other side, and that stays on the floor. Oh, and then your elbow finds the floor. Yeah. And you can have a loose hold of that ankle. These you want to be able to breathe. You want to be able to keep moving through your system. Yeah, getting back. So what do you do to get back? You can bend your leg again. So think, how do you get there, and then how do you get back? How reversible is this? Or do we end up rolling around the floor? That's fine. So feel free to have a roll, but that's not actually part of the ATM, but maybe it frees things up a little bit. So Bring whichever is the easiest. It's like, how far do we go with this? Whichever is the easiest leg to lift at the moment. Just bring that up into the air and rest there for a little moment. And but do bring your elbow down to the floor if you can. It makes a huge difference. That's it. Now, if you need to let go of your other ankle, do. Yep. And just rest there for a little bit. Now, with your leg up in the air, let it down again. I'm too slow with my instructions. You've all collapsed before I actually bring out the next bit. So that's right, because I'm waiting for all of you to be there at the same time. It's not going to happen. That's fine. So think it. All right, let's just think it first, all right? So the idea is that you're going to have both hands holding your ankles. Oh, well, you don't have to. One hand is holding one ankle, right? The other arm is leaning on the elbow out to the side somewhere. The leg that's up in the air is being held by your hand, yeah? And your other arm is resting on the floor somewhere so that you're supported, so you're not trying to balance everything up in the air. When you get to that point, can you think of moving your pelvis so that you lift the back of your pelvis a little bit from the floor and roll it back towards the floor? Oh, yes. So some of you who are struggling with even the basic thing, yeah? Now, here's another challenge for you. Could you do this without thinking that you're doing a stretch? Yeah? That it's a movement exploration. It's an ATM. Yeah. In that general direction. Yeah? That's the general direction. So you need to find the trajectory that allows your foot to come towards the ceiling. How much movement can you find in your pelvis in this position to be able to rock back a little towards the floor and up a little away from the floor? Yeah. And have a rest whenever you want to have a rest. These are big movements, and for some of you, challenging. For others, it's a breeze. Yeah? So this is, we find where we are, where each of us is in this process. Okay, everybody have a lie down. Have a rest. And don't worry, we're coming back to this a couple of times, and it gets easier and easier. Or rather, oh no, I won't go there. So as you're lying on the floor, just check in that you have stayed within your range of physical comfort, that you haven't got too caught up in ambition, in trying to achieve something that feels impossible, and that you can stay with the idea that this is an exploration. It's a way of finding out something about your organisation, but also something about your learning, the way that you learn, and how you could find some options there. So as you're lying there, could you imagine doing what you just did on one side on the other side? So just imagine it first. So you imagine yourself sitting with your knees wide, the soles of your feet towards each other, both hands holding your ankles, and that you could lean to one side Bring your elbow to the floor to enable that other leg to be lifted with the help of your hand towards the ceiling, to straighten a little towards the ceiling. And as you're imagining this, could you imagine breathing as well? Not holding your breath, not gritting, not tightening your jaw or your eyes, and allowing every part of you to be moving. So, roll to your side, come up to sitting, and see how you go with this. So this is the second side, the side you didn't choose to do first. So take it slowly. Check yourself as you go. So your other foot stays on the floor. Your knee comes towards the floor. Your elbow comes towards the floor. Your head is going to move through space. How do you get... That's it. And remember that that constraint of holding the other ankle can be a soft one. If that's difficult for you, then just find a place on the floor for your elbow and your forearm to rest. Your hand is going to be easier down, yeah. And when you get to a place where your leg is towards the ceiling, your knee is as straight as it's comfortable to get it, could you move your pelvis a little towards the floor and away from the floor and feel how that movement of your pelvis allows your whole trunk to move? It moves your head, it moves your ribs and your sternum, it changes the relationship of your shoulder, your ribs. That's it. And each time your pelvis goes back towards the floor and up away from the floor, that connects through to your head. That's it. That pushes your head up and brings it down again. That you're rounding and extending and still breathing. That's it. And let it go again. And find somewhere to a way to settle onto the floor again. And how much of you is there in your image of yourself now? How much space do you take up? How much of you is being supported by the floor? And when you're ready, roll to your side and come up to sit. And one last time, bring your hands to your ankles, have your knees wide, and just lift one leg and the other leg and see how, we'll lift one leg up and let it down, and then the other leg up and let it down. And just see if that's changed a little, if it's a bit more possible than the first time. And you can still have the idea of bringing your weight over onto that elbow outside of your other knee, onto the floor. That's it. So use that idea of shifting your weight to the side to be able to free up this leg. Yeah. That's it. And then let it go. And sit for a little moment or lie, but then we're going to come up to standing and see how that feels. And what all that weird rolling around and lifting legs might have done to your organisation up here. How easy is it to come up from the floor? And as you stand there, just notice anything that comes into your awareness as you shift your attention through yourself. You have a sense of your weight resting into your feet, your pelvis resting onto your legs, everything resting down into the floor. And shift your weight onto one leg, onto the other leg. Feel how freely your pelvis can move, how easily your weight can shift from one leg to the other leg. That's it. And have a little walk around. And see if your legs can swing easily. If your weight can shift from one leg to your other leg. If your head is free enough to be able to look around as you walk, to be able to shift your weight. Again, and what happens in your arms, your shoulders, your chest. And just out of interest, do you remember what we did right at the end of the week of bringing your hands down to the floor with your feet on the floor, finding your 4 points, and just see what that feels like now, just to remind yourself how it is to have 2 hands and 2 feet on the floor. Oh, have a look. Just bring one hand down to the floor and the other hand down to the floor and feel how your pelvis organizes itself over your legs, how your trunk can be long, how your belly can hang. And then come up again. And walk a little more and take a break, I think.